Hello, everyone. I'm Say here with Dominique Hollins, and we are here to have another Heart Conversations, part of our Black Lives Matter Heart Conversations series. And if you don't know who Dom is, you're about to have a wonderful surprise because Dom is amazing. I met her through Lexi Butler, and she's the founder and connector-in-chief at WE360 Degrees. And what is WE360? It's all about 360 degrees of workplace equity. It's a boutique diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging consulting firm. And what does Dom and the firm specialize in? They specialize in humanizing diversity in the modern workplace. And she is definitely in the business of workplace transformation, which you will learn about very shortly. So with that, Dominique, would you like to share with us a poem that you have to give us more context and understanding about who you are?
Yes, I was inspired by the spoken word artist. Could you remind me of her name one more time?
You spoke it.
You had B spoken on last time, and I listened to her poem, and I was like, man, she just re-energized my soul. Now I'm not as dope, and I don't have a spoken word poem, but I do have a small poem to frame the discussion for today. And this is one that I abide by in life, and it says, a bird soars in the sky, a fish glides in the sea. Put a bird in the sea and a fish in the sky, and they will die. So my question is, who are you? And let's go from there.
Whoa. Now I understand why this is a great framing for our conversation, because
Yeah.
that's one thing that it struck me when Dom and I first met about the desire to be authentic to who we are and stop trying to be something we're not, try to be somewhere where we're not made to be. And I think that's why you're key for bringing transformation to the workplace. So please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, yeah. First of all, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. The short of it is, I'm just a regular person who graduated from college in 2010 at the height of a financial crisis, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I wanted to hit the ground running in whatever industry and just show how smart I was and how many ideas I had and how I was going to change the world. And then I got into tech, and then I saw corporate America. And I was like, oh, changing the world isn't exactly an option available to me unless I want to fight throughout it. And, so I just opted into the fight. By that, I mean, I spent the past 10 years in the tech industry, on the operations and the business side, looking at how we were driving double-digit profitability at alarming rates that was fantastic. But yet we couldn't get diversity and inclusion right. And not only did we not get it right, we didn't get it right for 10 years, and the numbers have not moved. So I'm in a double digit providing or producing industry, and yet we can't produce change at a double digit level. So I became the change that I wanted to see. I went from Google to eBay, and now I am embodying all the things I would have loved to see from all the chief diversity officers and the work that they've done, but really taking those learnings and evolving them for the workplace of the future. And that's what I'm trying to do now.
That's awesome. And you are doing it with a vengeance. I already know that about you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the things that we discussed in our very first conversation, we had like this crazy synergy between us. Like
Yeah.
our very first conversation, just like we were supposed to have a half an hour quick chat, and it ended up being like over an hour, and we're just like, oh, and this and this and this.
Yes.
And one of the sparks of our conversation was around the power of symbols. So can you share with the audience about your understanding about the power of symbols?
Absolutely. Before I answer that, let me go back to your original question, which is tell us more about you. If I were to summarize that, I would say I am a connector. What I've noticed in all of our industries is that there are a number of ecosystems within our ecosystems, but they're not connecting. And if we don't connect them, then there will not be collective prosperity. So as an individual, my personal mission is to lead from the inside out by being a human connector of the human experience in an effort to further human collective prosperity. Until we all unify, we will not be prosperous as a collective group. So that's what my work is. When I talk about symbols and the power of symbols, what I've noticed is that societies in general are attached to the symbols with no accountability for what those symbols represent. So if I look at the United States as an institution, the Constitution talks about freedom and equality, but it really doesn't live up to that. And so there's so many people who are American and they live up to the US Constitution, but they're not actually living the ideals. If you look at the symbols of what it means to be a what are you, an justice worker? Well, what is your degree of aptitude? How well studied are you? Are you really ingrained? And so what I've noticed is that people are more attached to the symbol of something, of what something represents, versus their actual ability to live up to that symbol. If you are a Christian, which is one way that you and I connected very in a very deep way, say, then are you practicing the legalism of Christianity or the truth in the word? That's very different. If you are in corporate America and you pride yourself on being the lead technologist or the director or the CEO, are you leading with a sense of leadership open to all? So I just ask that if you're listening to this, whatever symbols you're following, classism, sexism, some form of ism that is making you superior, I ask, is the symbol worth the identity, and are you living up to what that symbol suggests? And if you are not, now is the time to determine your side and how you want to show up to really bring that symbol to life through the way you embody it.
As you were talking there, I was reminded of our initial conversation and how you said that right now in this shelter in place, we are in a cocoon of transformation. And that really struck me. And you said, and that transformation has to do with the fact that we have been living according to the symbols that were passed down to us from the Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
You know, where it's all about conformity, it's all about productivity, efficiency, control, and just the assembly line mentality. And now we're going into a new phase where we're entering to the cocoon. We're no longer supposed to operate as caterpillars. We're in a new age, especially with technology, like of creativity and connection, like you're talking about, and relationship, and us not just treating everything like robotically, but actually reaching and embodying the humanity, like connecting at a very human level with each other,
Yes.
which we're in constant flux. We're on this infinite spectrum of change. So can you share a little bit more about that transformation that we're leaving and going into, where we're getting in, becoming really butterflies in this like new creative age or technological age? I don't know what you would call this age, but can you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So one thing that people may or may not know about me is that I am hyper focused on what's happening at the macro level. I look at the political discourse because where our nation goes from an economic standpoint, corporate America will follow. Whether that requires you having to outsource things internationally, or if your import and exports have been impacted by a lot of the legislation that's happening, whether or not you can hire someone who is not from the US and making sure that they have the right certifications to stay here. There's a lot of things happening. And so when I think about the difference between the Industrial Revolution, where we came from, and the tech revolution, where we are actively in, they are fundamentally different. During the Revolution, we were factory driven, we were coal and carbon emissions, we were hands down into it. We were trying to produce as much as we could as a nation because our ability to export was an economic factor that was used to determine our legitimacy. Well, we got to a point where we have clearly determined our ability to generate domestic product. But beyond that is the building of community. Up until now, we weren't building communities. We were making widgets. We were widget makers. How many widgets can you make in an 8-hour day over 5 days in a week? And because of that mindset, and because we were trained to never talk about religion, politics, and money, we have completely alienated anything that might create connectivity. in this new world of technology, technology is connecting us in ways we have never been connected. But the caveat is that not everyone has access to Wi-Fi. Not everyone can keep up. So in this new phase, we are trying to influence community and engagement as an output for productivity, not widget making and how many things can you produce, but how many relationships do you create? How many connections can you provide? Can you meet supply and demand? If you can connect those two, that is what technology is doing at an accelerated rate. And if you are an engineer producing the algorithm, you need to understand your DEI lens. If you're a marketer, if you're a CEO, if you're an executive, you need to go from an output driven mind to output and community driven, because your community would accelerate any incremental gains you're aspiring to have. So it's a shift in mindset for community.
I love what you said about the output and community driven. I think that's the
Yes,
evolution that we're in, the
yes,
revolution that we're in, is that we're going beyond just simple output to it. Part of that productivity, part of our output needs to be community and connection as well.
yes. In fact, I would argue that I find it very interesting and almost laughable. We have engineers and product teams that are trying to figure out how to be more human and how they code. But if you yourself are not intrinsically more human in how you connect to people, then how can you program your algorithm to do the same? What I'm trying to get people to do is to start from their intrinsic humanity and to use that as a problem solving mechanism. It's not a soft skill. You're not being weak. You're not you're not failing because you're not thinking about the money. The money is produced through the people. So if you think about people first and how they operate, then that is your pathway to profitability. If that is your driver, I'm a person that thinks about humanity. So I'm driven by humanity. But capitalism and corporate America are driven by profitability. And you need both to succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the analogy of describing the global economy as being a rainbow, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
you've got red, blue, green, yellow, orange. But eh, if we're creating products for a rainbow global economy, if you only have red and blue in the room, or only have red and blue speaking up in the room, you're only going to make products that are going to resonate with the red and blue of the rainbow economy. You're missing green, you're missing orange, you're missing yellow. And
yep,
so we need people to tap into their own humanity to simply build products that are actually going to resonate with the humanity of our global economy. So I love that.
yep. And for those who are not there, I realize there is a population of people who don't like this language. It's too soft for them. I will rephrase it to say this. You have two opportunities you are weighing. A, it's the opportunity of growth by including a more expansive consideration set, whether that is the types of products you can create, the audiences you are building for, the perspectives and the features. The more you understand about human relationships and the ecosystem of how societies are built, the more you will capture the male perspective and the woman's perspective and the gender non-binary perspective and the Black perspective and the Asian and Latinx. You will see that we need to talk about all of them and not just one. Alternatively, if you do not, then you run the risk of all the money you lose by not engaging, because your competitors will do the same. When I was at eBay, I kept trying to convince them of some market opportunities. And one of the examples I use is that someone I went to high school with, and I was in the division with her. She worked at Amazon and built out an entire hair care product line for Amazon. And I was trying to get eBay to match me. But when your companies can't see the opportunity, you got to show them the competitive lands. And my example to them was, she is a risk if we do not follow through. So I ask companies to look at not only the profitability and the opportunity, but the risk of not starting with a human-centric approach. And I believe Amazon does as well, as despite some of the other things they don't do well, when it comes to centering their customer, they are proficient at doing that. So our customer is your employee base first, and then your customers, because you can't meet your customers if you're not meeting the needs of your employees, who essentially reflect your customers as a case study, if you will. earlier I read the poem, and this is a poem that I made up and I've been living through it, but it's identity and alignment. Who are you? Right? Are you a bird or you a fish? You're probably something else, but either you fly or you glide, right? There's a system to how you operate. And alternatively, it is the environment that you are in to enable you to fly or glide. If you are meant to fly, but you are in water, you will never reach your full potential. If you are meant to swim and you are in the air, you will never reach your full potential. What I am saying in this context is every single person that hears this, I do not care where you are in your walk of life. Have a subset of skills that have either been tapped or untapped, developed or underdeveloped. And it is your superhero power. I don't care if you can speak well, if you dance, if you build computers, if you mop closets, whatever your thing is, you are pre-wired to do that thing exceptionally well. It can potentially be monetized, and if it's not monetized, it will be respected. So what I'm saying to everyone who is engaged in this conversation is, what do you do well that people always ask you to do and you don't even think about it? What's that one or two things that people keep calling you for? And you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. It probably is a big deal. That's why they're calling you. I did not know who I was. I did not know my value. It's because I was a bird in the sea of corporate America. I am naturally a performer, an artist. I am art driven, but I molded myself in the context of corporate America, which watered down some of my skills. And today I am mending the two to become my best self. And I fully believe that if you are listening to me, you are in the midst of that process and you are fully capable of doing the same thing. I want you to take the best of you, even if you don't know what it is. We can probably I want you to mirror that with the best environment for you to flourish. Only when those two are aligned can you be your best self. And if you don't feel that right now, you probably are not where you're supposed to be, and you probably need a conversation to conjure the greatness within you. So that is my aspiration. I don't care if I'm talking to you about business. I am going to get you from the inside out, because who you are as a business leader is a function of the way that you have handled yourself in terms of your personal development.
So much synergy. I, I just finished writing a book called The Spineless Porcupine, and one of the scenes is about when the spineless porcupine born without any spines, finally discovers what she can do that nobody else can do.
Yes.
She's done it her whole life but never saw it. And it's as natural as who taught the birds how to fly, exactly. And
Yes.
who taught the fish how to swim. Like,
Yes.
it's what we innately do, like more natural than breathing. And
Mhm.
that is our superpower, whatever
Yes.
that is, like exactly what you said, Dom. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Dom, do you have any final words for our audience?
I do. I want you, person, who are hearing me, to really sit down and think about, who are you in this moment? Are you a connector? Are you a barrier breaker? Are you a creator? Are you a builder? Are you a movement maker? And if you're like, I'm not actually any of that, I'm just a person, that's a great start, because your humanity is the beauty within you. I came from a dark past. I did not like people and I did not like myself. And I had to undo the trauma in my personal life that made me that person at that stage. But it is not my story and it is not yours. I don't care what happened to you. It is not the end of your journey. So, with that, I ask you to give yourself one chance to really sit with who you are, who you know yourself to be, not your family, not your friends, not anybody you thought should determine your value and your worth. It's you. And when you come out on the other side, I hope you have a plan to live in your most authentic way. Without that, we're getting a shadow of who you are, and we want the full you. So I hope that you love yourself enough to invest in you so the world can reap the benefit of that. And that's my takeaway.
Thank you. It reminds me of your quote on your LinkedIn that says, yesterday I was so clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself.
Yes.
By Rumi, and you have changed yourself and you are changing the world. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for that. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you so much, Say. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.